Hello, I'm Tim Leibert and I am the project leader of Arrival Regions.
And my name is Sergej Sundarec, and I'm the project coordinator of Arrival Regions.
Sergej and I are now both back at the Institute again, roughly 100 meters and one store apart. But this is how our project work has looked like during the lockdown when we were encouraged to work from home. We have used video conferences to discuss our project activities and to stay in contact with the project partners. Digitalizing the project activity has worked surprisingly well, but we are still a little bit upset that we had to digitalize and postpone our partner meeting scheduled for May 19th and 20th in Osijek. Video conferences can never fully replace personal meetings and interactions, but they are still an indispensable tool to stay in contact with our project partners from Croatia, the Czech Republic, Italy, Poland, and Slovenia in times of closed borders.
As for today, the 25th of May, there are 180,328 cases of COVID-19 in Germany. In absolute numbers, Germany is the fourth most affected country in the European Union after Spain, Italy, and France. About 160,000 affected persons have already recovered, which means that there are around 20,000 active cases in Germany. As for today, there are almost 8,400 people have died as a result of pandemic, which is a rather low number in international comparison.
The regional distribution of cases and deaths in Germany is rather uneven. The southern part of the country, namely Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, is the most affected, while the numbers are especially low in federal states like Saxony-Anhalt and Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania. Here in Leipzig, which is located in the Free State of Saxony, both the number of cases and deaths is well below the German average, and the current rate of new infections is close to zero. So what are the restrictions in place and how is the local population reacting to them? Germany is slowly lifting most of the restrictions. All shops are open again, restaurants, schools, museums, and so on are reopening step by step with the obligation to make sure that customers can keep their distance and follow safety measures, for instance, by wearing face masks. Opinion polls show that a majority of the population supports the government's corona policies, including social distancing and the obligation to wear masks in shops and public transport. However, there are also demonstrations in many cities around the country where people voice their opposition to the restrictions. These demonstrations attract a very diverse audience, including conspiracy theorists, anti-vaxxers and right-wing populists, but also people worried about the economic consequences of the crisis and people who criticize the suspension of basic liberties during the crisis. The pandemic also gave interesting insights into the functioning of German federalism. I suppose many Germans were not aware of the level of autonomy of the Bundesländer. Every state is currently pursuing its own approach of lifting the restrictions. In some states, for instance, you can go to the gym, in others, they are still closed. There are also sometimes very different approaches concerning the reopening of schools. The Free State of Saxony, where our institute is located, is expected to lift most of the restrictions by June 6th.
The pandemic of COVID-19 seriously influenced migration movements in Central Europe. As many other states in EU, on the 16th of March 2020, Germany introduced the travel restrictions. As for now, non-EU citizens are allowed to enter the country only if they already obtained the residence permit in Germany. German consulates are not guaranteeing any new visas for non-EU nationals at the moment. The decision to stop the reception of asylum seekers who should have been relocated to the country under the resettlement program from the 18th of March has once again divided the local populations. While a lot of right-wing media are supporting the idea of total entry denial for asylum seekers, the Federal Foreign Office claims that the reception is going further, though they should introduce new health measurements. Leipzig has a lot of left-wing supporters, and since the middle of March, you can see a lot of self-made posters around the city which demand the easement of travel restrictions for asylum seekers. The pandemic also became a huge challenge for the local reception and accommodation centers. Due to the high concentration of inhabitants in such centers, as well as a lack of understanding in between newcomers and officials, it is very hard to successfully introduce the COVID-19 preventive measures there. According to research carried by the University of Bielefeld, Since the beginning of the pandemic, there have been registered more than 1,400 positive COVID cases among the inhabitants of such centers in North Rhine-Westphalia, Bavaria, Brandenburg, Bremen, Hesse-Saxony, and Saxony-Anhalt. The situation is also very challenging for irregular migrants, as this group of migrants does not obtain the health insurance. Unfortunately, due to the fear of being deported, the majority of irregular migrants refuse the opportunity to use the healthcare services, even if they have suspected the carrying of COVID-19. As for today, several charity and human rights organizations are helping irregular migrants to receive the healthcare services anonymously.
So how do we personally cope with the current changes? For me personally, things are slowly coming back to a certain degree of normality. By June, I will finish working from home office and return to the Institute on a daily basis. I hope that this new normality with a balance of freedoms and restrictions will also manifest in our partner countries, and that our partners will be able to carry out our project activities according to plan, including the launch of the pilot initiatives and the trainings. I am personally now very much aware of the value of cooperation and free movement within the EU. I sincerely hope that the borders will soon open again to enable us to meet, cooperate with, and learn from our friends in the other countries of Central Europe.
I can only agree. I'm getting the feeling that things are slowly getting back to normal. Unfortunately, it's still unclear when I will be able to see my family in Ukraine, but I still have a hope that restrictions for travels out of the EU will be lifted soon. Current pandemic taught me that I should value the freedom of movement much more, but I am sure the positive changes are coming, both for people here in Germany and for our project.